All right, putting a disclaimer on there right now.
All right.
Those of the sponsor and do not necessarily reflect the views of Radio 1, WTLC AM 1310, 92.7 FM, 95.1 FM, The Light, and its management.
And playing the intro.
The Concerned Clergy invite you to our weekly town hall meeting on AM 1310, The Light.
All right, here we go. And 3, 2, 1, you're live.
Well, IMPD has released I would not call it a redacted, but I would say they have put together a video based on the body camera footage from the incident that happened with Anthony Macklin. That video was released on yesterday, and we're going to be talking about that particular situation and the video and what it shows. If you would like to be part of the conversation, feel free to call in 317-239-1310, 317-239-1310. Let us pray. Father God, Lord, we just want to thank you for this day, Lord. We ask in the name of Jesus, Lord, that you just lead, guide, and direct our time on tonight, Lord. We pray, Lord, that all that we do, Lord, will bring glory unto you. We pray for our listening audience as well. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, I'm Reverend Tony Alexander, and I'm glad to be with you on this evening. And once again, IMPD has, they have released the video from the Anthony Macklin case. There were, I believe, 3 body camera videos that were used to put together the footage from what they showed on yesterday. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to play portions of that video, and we're going to ask you, what do you think? What are your thoughts? And if you're listening on AM 1310, if you'd like to be part of the conversation, feel free to call in 317-239-1310, 317-239-1310. Now, we first of all want to be praying for Mr. Macklin, his recovery, his family. There has been, I would say, an extremely it's going to be an extremely difficult road to recovery. I would say just not physically for Mr. Macklin, but I would say extremely emotionally for that family, especially his grandmother who was there, and she was the one that called. What I would say is that we want to keep that entire family in prayer, because we don't want guilt to set in from their perspective from what law enforcement may have done that they should not have done. We have our chief, Randal Taylor. He said that there was an issue with training. Yes, he said there was an issue with training. All too often, that's what we're finding, is that is what we're being told, is that there is a training issue. And the question is, what's the issue with training? What's the issue with training? Why is it that all too often we're seeing that from a law enforcement perspective, the ones that are professionals, the ones that should know how to handle certain calls, should know how to interact with folks that could be possibly carrying weapons and interacting with them, we would also hope that they would be able to know how to interact with an individual who was sleeping. And we're going to have some time on today where we're going to look at that video. We're going to listen to that video for those of you that are part of our listening audience. And we're going to ask you, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? when we're going to listen to about 7 minutes or so, and then I'm going to ask you once again, what are your thoughts?
North Oxford. I don't know if it's a true. There's a car backed up in my driveway, and it seems like it's still running. And I turned off my
Okay. What color is the vehicle?
black. It looks black.
What's the make and model? Do you know?
I can't make it out.
Is it a car, truck, SUV?
Huh?
Is it a car, truck, SUV?
It's a car.
Four-door car?
It looks like it.
Okay. And it's backed up in your driveway, idling?
Yes, it looks like it's on. And I clicked the porch light off and on, and nobody came out. And I don't want to go out to see who's out there. I don't know. I don't know if it's one of my kids. I don't know. Nobody is getting out.
Okay, stay on the line. Don't hang up.
Okay.
IMPD officers arrived and made contact with the homeowner, who again said she did not recognize the car. When IMPD officers approached the vehicle, they saw a man who was asleep with a handgun in his lap.
So what you've heard thus far is pretty much what has been provided to the public from IMPD. That is what they call their critical incident video. They have it entitled as 3600 North Oxford Street. And up to this point, what we hear is pretty much what the call was about. We hear the 911 call. We hear the concerns of the young man's grandmother and her uncertainty as to who may actually be in her driveway. She indicated that it possibly could be one of her grandchildren, and but she did not know. And remember, she is calling, and she said, I didn't want to go out there on my own. And she called for someone to take a look at who was that individual. So that's where we're at thus far. That's first few seconds, or excuse me, couples of minutes of the video. Prior to showing the video, what IMPD did was they discussed the procedures for body-worn cameras, what exactly should trigger an officer's camera to activate. And if you would like to hear some of those policies and procedures, you can do that also by going to IMPD TV, their YouTube channel, and you can get that information. But let us listen a little bit more to this as well. For those that are on Facebook, you can also see the video. Those that are listening as part of our radio audience, there will be some gaps that you may not hear, but hopefully you'll be able to get an understanding of the completeness through the audio.
He's got a gun right on his lap. He's got a gun right on his lap. Yeah.
334.
See it right there?
Yeah.
Officers attempted to open the door and retrieve the handgun, but the doors were locked.
Do you want me to go try to open this door and grab it? It's locked. It's hard to... Is it locked? Yeah, it's locked. If you try the back door, try it lightly though.
Officer Riley ran the plate on the car, which was registered out of Florida. He asked the homeowner, who was also the 911 caller, if she had any relatives in Florida. She said she did not.
Don't know who it is.
Do any of your grandkids live in Florida? Yeah.
After approximately 3 minutes, officers knocked on the passenger side window. As the driver awoke, he began to move and officers discharged their firearms. 3 IMPD officers discharged their service weapons. Following the officer's instructions, the man exited the car. He was detained, and IMPD officers then provided medical aid until paramedics arrived.
It is negative active EAN holding to a Kia 4-door, red in color.
Let's go ahead and wake him up. I'm going to stand right here. Chandler, if he falls on that gun, it goes in.
Yeah.
Yell.
Yeah. I mean,
Police department!
Police! 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 Put your hands! Shots fired! Shots fired! Hands up! Get on the coach! Get on the ground! 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 Get on the ground!
Get on the ground, baby.
Holy crap.
So unfortunately, that right there was the incident as it transpired, as it has been provided to the public through the body-worn camera footage from IMPD. I stated earlier that Chief Randal Taylor had made a comment that he thought that some of the issue he stated when asked by a reporter was that it was training. And a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was, we even raised the question because he had mentioned that once again. So now it's a couple of times regarding the same incident that our chief has mentioned the issue is training. And we have to ask the question, what is the issue with training? What is the issue with training? Because it appears to me that they are trained very well to shoot. They are trained very well to shout out certain commands regardless of what an individual may be doing. They are trained to say certain language if they are involved in a police action shooting that they fear for their lives. They're trained to do certain things, and they do those things very well. But when it comes with the interactions with the community, our chief has said that there is an issue with training. So a couple of weeks ago, I posed the question to the public, well, what is the issue and what are your thoughts? And there are some comments that are rolling in our Facebook feed that's saying that there is a lack of trust with the police department. Says that we should investigate the police department. And that is one thought. But when we're looking at training at a very minimum, you need to look at what is the training, who are the ones that are doing the training, and why is it that in certain aspects they're trained very well and in others it seems like there's no training whatsoever. Once again, they are trained for certain things where they get it very consistently. There is a very consistent, once again, when you look at training, there is a consistency. If we look at all the trials, you look at all of the law enforcement officers that are on the stand, there is always a consistency in their testimonies. That has to come from some great training and them gravitating to that training. But we have to ask ourselves, what could we have done differently? Because if the chief is saying, and once again, if the chief is saying that there's an issue with training, then chief, we're going to have to help you. We're going to have to help you. We do have a caller on the line. If you would like to be part of our conversation, feel free to call in. 317-239-1310. 317-239-1310. We do have, it looks like we have Mayhem. Mayhem, good evening.
Hey, how's it going, my friend?
Hey, we're doing fine. How are you?
Pretty good. I heard you earlier. The problem is whoever's controlling media here, these reports are not going beyond the states. This should have been on CNN. The other one should have been on CNN. I don't know who's controlling media. And then we got Johnny come lately thinking they up on stuff. And I think they are stopping media too. Media on radio and TV, I have no confidence in them anymore. The chief need to be fired. We having too many incidents like this after him. The buzzword is training. The city is not in the uproar, and it's not going anywhere. He was asleep. Somebody knock on a window. What you think they're gonna do? So, and I'm surprised he's alive. They shot in his car 30 times. That was to me that was like murder. You shot the when you hear that, all three of them emptied their clips on this boy while he was asleep. And also the professionalism, how they chopped that tape up. They need to show the raw tape from beginning to end. They chopped it up. They very professional at hiding things. The people need to be an uproar of this corrupt police department you have in your city. They need to be investigated again. And once again, that chief need to be gone. And that mayor do not need to run a third time. This is under his watch. Maybe he need to be locked up. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you so much for your phone call. Well, that right there is one thought, that the chief needs to be fired. However, we have a serious issue. The chief, having a change in the chief is something that is a thought that a lot of folks have. When you look at this chief, a lot of folks would say that you don't see much of the chief. You don't hear much from the chief. In a case like this, what was disturbing to me and a lot of other folks was that our chief has gone on public record and he has spoken in regards to issues such as what happened in the case of Memphis. And he actually went on record and said that what those officers did was wrong. However, when it comes to cases and instances of what is happening here in Indianapolis, you do not hear the voice of the chief. You do not hear the chief sharing, here's what his thought is, other, as Mayhem said, the buzzword, and that buzzword being training. That's all we hear. So something does certainly have to change. Mayhem mentioned something in regards to CNN and a national spotlight. That comment was also a comment that was on our Facebook feed. Element mentioned that, where is Reverend Al Bill Crump? Where you're asking, where are the, once again, some of the national advocates? We've talked about that a few times on this show, and that question comes up quite a bit. I think Mayhem is more on it than saying where they're at. And here's what I mean. To get certain advocates in, such as a Reverend Al Sharpton or Attorney Crump, what is necessary is the family and their attorneys need to reach out to them. They need to facilitate them. And that needs to come from a personal level, from the family reaching out and saying, here's, how we would like to have our case handled. And here's, we're going to call and ask for their assistance. That has to be done. That is a major part of it. However, what Mayhem said is something that the local media does have a responsibility, and I agree with him there, because IMPD is releasing videos. IMPD is bringing videos that have been chopped up, doctored, and the local media can report on that. What was very disappointing is this morning, the local media only reported to the fact that the video was out. There may have been one station that reported a little bit more, but from what I saw, the only reporting was that the video was out. There was no commentary on, well, here's what we did see or what we didn't see. So from a to get that out, you do need some in the local media that are more dogged at getting that out. I know we do have other callers on the line. I've already moved past our break, but let's go ahead and get our break in. If you would like to be part of our conversation, feel free to call in 317-239-1310, 317-239-1310. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on AM 1310, 92.7 and 95.1 FM, The Light.
Let the One VIP Visa debit card make getting your tax refund simple and easy. It's free to get and no credit.
All right, we're going to commercial break.
All right.
2 minutes.
Okay.
And then the only person we got so far is just Mike.
That'll work.
All right.
Visa prepaid card is issued by Stride Bank, N.A. member FDIC, pursuant to a license from Visa USA Inc. Use of the One VIP card is subject to terms and conditions.
Coming to TV One, Asking for a Friend.
I've done my share of dating.
With Lisa Ray McCoy.
I know how hard it is to find a partner with just the right combination of looks and charm. I thought I found Mr. Right many times, but that's a whole nother show. Join me as I host a new dating show called Asking for a Friend, where best friends try to find love matches for their best friends. It's hilarious, it's revealing, it's surprising.
Don't miss Asking for a Friend, hosted by Lisa Ray McCoy, premiering tomorrow night at 8 on TV One.
IRS. 3 letters that strike fear into everyone, and for a good reason. The IRS is the most powerful collection agency on earth, and being in debt to the IRS can have serious consequences. Oftentimes, it begins with the IRS sending you a collection letter and then escalates. And before Before you know it, they're garnishing your paychecks, seizing your bank accounts, even your home or business could be at risk. But thankfully, there's Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 most trusted tax relief firm. They've resolved over $1 billion in tax debt for their clients, A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Their tax professionals have the expertise and experience to help you put your tax debt to rest. Call now and...
All right, about 10 seconds and we'll get back into the show.
All right. Thank you.
All right, playing the intro again right now. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1, you're live.
If you would like to contact the Concerned Clergy, you can do so by sending an email, and that email address is clergyindy@gmail.com. Once again, clergyindy@gmail.com. You can also phone the Concerned Clergy, and that toll-free number is 1-800-771-4061, 1-800-771-4061, where we have been discussing on tonight's Concerned Clergy radio show the release of the video footage, the body cam video footage in regards to the Anthony Macklin case, in which he was asleep in his grandmother's driveway, and IMPD has released some edited footage from that body cam. Those body cam, body-worn cameras that were on the officers that were on the scene. So we have shared some of that on tonight, and we're asking, what are your thoughts? The chief has talked about training. Once again, what are your thoughts? You can comment by calling in to the radio station, 317-239-1310, 317-239-1310. We do have a caller that has been holding, so let's go ahead and bring in Mike. Mike, good evening.
Hey, good evening. My thought on all of this is just from a human nature and not the legal response, because that's what the attorney's going to do what attorneys do. But I was speaking with a radio host earlier today, and I brought up that, maybe the police should have tried turning on the police sirens and the lights to wake him up. And I also mentioned that, maybe they should have went up there and brought his grandmother down and let her stand behind them to put eyes on it. Because when you shoot blindly, you come up with innocent people hurt. Reverend Alexander, I'm going to share this with you, just like the nation. We saw last week how not the Soviet Union, but China sent this big old balloon over here to spy on us. So what did this country do? We sent up a U-2 plane to spy on the balloon, to put eyes on it. Then the president decided, no, we're not going to shoot it down in Montana. We're not going to shoot it down over in Kansas. We're not going to shoot it down in the Carolinas. We're going to wait till it get out there over the waters. Why? To keep collateral damage from being done. It's amazing. The smarter people get, they just don't think logic anymore. You have to put eyes on something, or otherwise you are shooting blindly. And like I said, I say this from a human nature, because the attorney's going to do what the attorney's going to do, and there was no reason for them to unload their weapons into that part. Because on the police, like I said, they had enough equipment on them to make enough noise. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for your phone call there, Mike. All right. You have a good evening. What I will say there is, in regards, once again, let's say we're talking about training. What could they have done different? Mike brought up a couple good points. He said, yes, she could have, the police could have brought the grandmother and had her at least look at the individual that was in the car before they did anything. Some would say that, okay, that could be dangerous, irresponsible. But let's remember let's remember, there were at least 5 minutes prior to what they did happening. So, and she said a few things. In the 911 call, she said, I just didn't want to go out there because I didn't want to go out there by myself. So the police officers could have escorted her out there, and they could have, in a safe way, at least said, can you look at this person? Because remember, once again, we listen to at least what's been provided to us. What's been provided to us shows us this. It was at least 5 minutes. The narrator said 3 minutes, at one point. And it was, they tried pulling on the handle. They had already knocked on there lightly. They had already tried the back door. He was still asleep. So they hadn't disturbed him. They had flashlight that was shining in the windshield. He was still asleep. So they had already been around the car talking, radios going. There was no threat. So conceivably, now if you say training says don't bring grandma over, that's one thing. But they haven't demonstrated anything regarding training, because they could have simply said, ma'am, how about looking at this individual? We've got several officers there that can have eyes on him while you look as well. They could have did that, and in 30 seconds, they could identify who he was. And if training, quote unquote, says that you don't bring her and let her at least look at that individual, you could have taken a picture. You all have cell phones. You could have taken a picture and said, this is who it is, and showed it to her. Don't tell me there wasn't anything else you could have done, and your only option was to bang on the door and give him less than 3 seconds to respond and fire and unload 30 shots. What does training say? What does training say as far as how do we encounter a sleeping individual that's sitting in a car? What does training say now that the law says that there's permitless carry? Let's keep in mind that reports have been that Mr. Macklin, that he was legally carrying and did have his permit. But regardless, we are lawmakers. Y'all passed the law. Remember, we now have a law that says that we're in permitless carry. So are you saying that we're going to pass a law that says we have permitless carry, but law enforcement says, if you're carrying, we're going to shoot you? We have to go to a break. If you would like to be part of the conversation, feel free to call in. 317-239-1310. 317-239-1310. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on AM 1310, 92.7 and 95.1 FM, The Light.
To attend college for much less than you thought. Apply at RMSF.
Hey, sorry about that. Somebody came into the studio as I was talking to them.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in commercial break. We got about About another minute and 20 seconds.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Anybody holding?
Nobody right now.
All right, good.
Nope, just you.
All right. I'm going to put you on hold for 30 seconds.
Yeah, about 30 seconds. We'll get started.
All right. All right.
All right. I'm playing the intro again right now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. And 3, 2, 1, you're live.
Welcome back to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. I'm Reverend Tony Alexander, your host for this evening. And later on in our program, we're going to have the privilege of having the City County Council candidate for District 1, David W. Greene Sr. Some of you know him as the president of the Concerned Clergy, as well as the pastor of Purpose of Life Ministries, but he is also a candidate now for City County Council here in Indianapolis, Marion County. So we're going to have him at the top of the hour. That's going to be at 8 o'clock. For those of you that are listening, our listening audience on Radio 1, feel free to join us on Facebook. My Facebook page there, Tony Alexander. You can join us, and we will be continuing this conversation as well on Facebook. And what have we been talking about? Well, we've been talking about the release of the video from IMPD, in which they have shared an edited version of body-worn camera footage from the officers that were on the scene there in the incident with Mr. Anthony Macklin. And we definitely want to share that, and I think one of our callers mentioned that it's great just to say that Mr. Macklin has survived, and he's recovering, and we're hoping for and praying for complete recovery. But we know there's going to be some emotional scarring on that family due to this incident. And the only thing that the chief of police here for IMPD could say is that it's due to training. That doesn't work, Chief. We have to do more. You are the professionals. We can't say that an instance like this is because of training. Because if you continue to say that, you got to say, what's the issue with training? What's the issue with training? Why is it every single incident? We have not even talked about the case with Mr. Herman Whitfield. Once again, we have folks that, and IMPD is always asking to hear from the community. You're always asking for the community to reach out and share what's going on in the community and talk to law enforcement. But when law enforcement gets called, we have cases like this that's going to make people apprehensive in calling law enforcement. It's going to make folks apprehensive in dealing with law enforcement. A lot of folks say that here's the very reason why I do not call law enforcement. How do we build trust with IMPD? How do we build trust with law enforcement? How do we build a bridge to which we can honestly say that the leadership hears the community? And it's much more than training. Because I'll say this, and I'll say this over and over and over and over again. You can tell that they're trained very well in certain aspects. You can tell that they're trained to say certain things that can be heard over the radio or be captured in recordings. You can tell that they're trained in those areas. You can tell that they're trained how to be great witnesses on the witness stand. You can tell because they all do and say the same thing. You can tell that they're trained very well when it comes to interactions with the community. There can't be training. There can't be the training to the extent that we see in the other areas in protecting their own careers. Let's think about it. Here we have, in so many cases, we see, we hear the reasoning for why an officer used force. And it's always the same. There's no deviations. So they get it they get it well. And they're able to demonstrate that in their actions. That they got that. But when we look at this case, and we know that we have officers that are still, they're just reassigned. And we know that there hasn't been any calls, at least from the chief, or, for either suspension, termination. We're not hearing anything in regards to submitting these officers to the merit board. Brother Omar Jackson, I would tend to agree with you, is that leadership in this city needs to do something. And if we're going to say that it's training, what's the issue with training? If that's what we're going to say each and every time that we have an incident such as this, oops, it's training. We can't keep saying oops. We can't keep saying, well, we're going to do better next time. We have to demonstrate that we know better now. We can't allow these officers to continue to, just come on this street, whether they're new officers, whether they're experienced officers. We can't continue to allow this type of behavior to come from law enforcement. Once again, they are the professionals. Once again, we now have laws that say that there is permitless carry. So we can't have laws that say on one hand, there's permitless carry and anybody can carry and you can't ask me questions. And then on the other hand, we have law enforcement that says if you do carry, we're going to shoot first and ask questions later. We can't do that. We can't say that it's training. We had an earlier call said there was so much that we could have done from a standpoint of not raising the escalation of the situation. Because when you really think about it, there was only going to be one outcome. You really think about it. There's only going to be one outcome. Once they approached that vehicle and he had a gun, there's only going to be one outcome. Think about it. They knocked, they shot. There was only going to be one outcome. They knocked, they shot. Why did they knock? Because they wanted to wake him up. Well, when he woke up, what did they do? They shot. You've heard nothing that says that he grabbed for his weapon. In the video that we shared on tonight, which was provided by IMPD, you actually see the young man's face. He looks directly at the officer. It's been stated Nothing to the contrary, but it has been stated that, once again, he did not grab for his weapon. He didn't point. He didn't shoot. There was no threat to the officers other than he woke up and he looked at the officer. That being the case, there was only going to be one outcome. Once he wakes up. While he was asleep, there was a period of time, we know at least 3 minutes, because that was stated in the video, per the narration that was provided by IMPD. We listened. We heard them whispering, which was, I thought, kind of ironic. You know, a couple times, okay, they reached for the handle. They whispered, lightly knocked. You could hear conversation with the young man's grandmother. You hear her say prior, I want to make sure it's not one of my grandchildren. She says that prior. That right there, she's giving them an avenue to say, well, let's try to do something to check. How can we figure it out? He's still asleep. We can have officers on standby watching him. What could we have done? Training Chief Taylor. You could have either brought her over, or you could have taken a photo and let her look at the photo. Those are two options. Just two. So we're asking ourselves once again, training, those are two options right there. Those are two things that could have been done. Our officers are trained very well now. They are trained to shoot first and ask questions later. And I really want us to understand the gravity of where we're at. Because we have laws that have been passed, laws that say, on one hand, we have permitless carry, anyone can carry. However, you cannot, as law enforcement, ask them questions. But then on the other hand, law enforcement is acting in a way that says, if you carry, we're going to shoot first and ask questions later. In this case, that is what was demonstrated. It was demonstrated that we will shoot first and ask questions later. As we shared and we listened to the footage that was provided by IMPD, we hear calmness in conversations. We hear direct request from a grandmother says, I want to make sure that it's not one of my grandchildren. What we did not play, as after they shot him, they immediately ordered him to the ground. And you heard him say, I just didn't want to wake you, Grandma. And if you hear the family speak, and if you have heard them on some of the news reports, you've heard that Mr. Macklin just said he was going to take his grandmother to breakfast in the morning, and he just didn't want to wake her. All reports have him as an outstanding citizen. Once again, he was a legally carrying gun carrier. The video showed that there was no time for a reaction other than for him to wake up. And with that, they made the decision pretty much that once he woke up, that they were going to shoot. If he didn't grab for his weapon, he made no threatening moves, The only thing that you see in the video is that he woke up. That being the case, the options were then limited. They limited themselves at that point because in their minds, and whether or not they said it out loud, their actions show that we shoot first and we have the ability to ask questions later. So when we're asking about training, we have to say more than that we have an issue with training. We have to really ask, what's the issue with training? What is the issue with training? Why is it every instance we have the same excuse? However, the ones that are paid professionals cannot seem to get what most people would say are common sense reactions and actions to things such as this when you come on this particular, if you come on a scene such as this. And I understand, you know, some of the comments that we have on Facebook that there needs to be an investigation. There does need to be someone that says we have to look into this. And then not just say that we need to look into it, but then make sure that there are eyes that are really diving into what not just happened here, but what has happened in previous cases, as well as moving forward. And then what do we do differently? And how do we expedite that process? How can we start some now things where you don't have to wait for contracts with trainers, and you don't have to wait for different FOP contracts to be signed? What can we do that's going to make an immediate impact in interactions with the community? Well, we do have another caller that's on the line. Let's go ahead and bring in, we have Denise. Denise, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. I'll make it really quick. Thank you so much for leaving the emotions out and sticking to the facts, underlining facts. He's going to need a lot of prayer, and so will the family. His mind and his body. It's not about millions of dollars, although he will get it. And I'm really disappointed in IMPD. I don't think the chief needs to be fired. I think he needs to be held accountable for the training. Thank you for doing a great job on giving the facts. I agree with everything that you said. And now the chief knows that the community has spoken.
Well, thank you so much for your phone call, and continue to listen and call in anytime. Well, once again, we thank Denise for her comments. What we want to do is, and hopefully that we're going to have our city county council candidate for District 1. We're going to have Pastor Greene. He's going to join us at the top of the hour in our, if you will, we'll call it just our after show. We're going to ask him about this particular case and what would he do differently as city county council as well if he were elected. So look forward to that. If you would, like to be part of that conversation as well, we'll continue our conversation once again at 8 with our city county council candidate. And then as we round out the show with our Radio 1 audience, we want to encourage you as well. We want to encourage you to not just listen and not just take what you're given, but make sure that we are, as Denise said, what we're doing is we are listening, we are looking at the facts, and we are being led by the facts. So we want to thank you all for that have been with us with Radio 1. We do have to go ahead and let you go, but what we will be doing is we're going to bring in our City County Council candidate, David W. Greene Sr. He's going to join us and talk about his candidacy. But once again, Radio 1 audience, we pray that you will be well, be blessed, but you can join us once again on Facebook, Antonio Tony Alexander, and we will continue our conversation there. So be blessed, those of you with Radio 1. So we want to go ahead and continue our conversation with our City County Council candidate. We have Pastor Greene that has joined us on tonight. So we want to go ahead and let's see if we can go ahead and bring him in. Pastor Greene.
God bless you, Reverend Alexander.
I know that you're there waiting. We're going to go ahead and bring you in. So we want to say good evening to you, our City County Council candidate. Many of you know him as Pastor Greene. A lot of you know him as the president of the Concerned Clergy of Indianapolis, but now he is also a candidate for City County Council. So we want to go ahead and give you an opportunity to just share about your candidacy and what led you to this particular point and this particular season in which you decided to run for a council.
Well, good evening, Reverend Alexander. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be with you on this evening. We, after much prayer and talking with my wife, decided that we would run for City County Council because we just want to see things improve for the community. We want to bring a great balance to the corporation side, the corporate side, and the community, and make it a win-win for all parties. And ensure that we as a city are really progressing and be a city that people want to move to. Hopefully many of our college graduates close by will say we'll stay and feel like this is a place for opportunity and be a part of the solution to some of the issues we face in terms of housing, in terms of education, in terms of public safety, clearly in our streets, trying to make sure that we're not going to the tire shop after we drove to work.
Well, those issues are all extremely important issues, and as you're diving into this, you made a comment that it was something that was definitely something that was a family decision. And I can imagine being a pastor as well, your family is an extended family as well. Kind of talk about that dynamic as well as because you are a spiritual father to so many.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't do this in isolation because of the time requirement to do the task that's in front of you, the energy you've got to put forth, the meetings you got to be a part of. So you have to be able to say, you want to have support of certainly your wife, your children, your church family. All that's important. So it's what we shared with them on Sunday, because you can't do this in isolation. There's too much to it. And the other great point of it, at least you get to have all these voices. So you get to hear, different sides of arguments. And I think that's a thing you have to take into account too. And I think that's one of my gifts, is to look at things through various lenses. Because of my background, I started out in working for IBM in a business world, so I certainly understand corporate America and what they've got to do is be successful. And I've been a pastor, so I understand community. I've worked in the community, and you have to find that middle road where both people are successful, and not just one.
Well, we definitely wish you the best on this particular journey. I know it's definitely a new journey, uncharted territory for you, if you will. Before we, dive into our conversation, I will at least let me see if we can put up. You do have a campaign headquarters, and we do have information on that. So let's see if we can go ahead and put that information up for you, and share that with those of you that are on Facebook. But that headquarters is 5450 Lafayette Road, and that's suite number 9 there, Pastor.
Yeah, we've been blessed to be able to establish a headquarters. We also got a website, vote the number 4 green, GREENE.com. So you can go to voteforgreen.com and get additional information. Support our campaign. We'd love to have your support, your donation, as we really want to represent the community and help build Indianapolis.
All right. Well, once again, best wishes on that. Now, to that end, as a council person, and before you came on, I shared with our audience that we would ask you straight out, as we were talking about the case of Anthony Macklin and the footage that was released by IMPD, the edited body worn camera footage in which they released on yesterday. We talked about that for the previous hour. And I know you've had an opportunity to view that footage. We talked about training a lot throughout that first hour, and got some thoughts from the community. But I'd shared. I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts in regard to that, and what would you even consider that maybe we should consider doing as a city county council person?
Well, first, my prayers go out to the Macklin family. You watch that video to see that grandmother talking about her grandson being shot, it rips at your heart, and have to know that she's feeling. Obviously, Brother Macklin is wounded, and there's serious stuff there. I mean, I'm not minimizing that, but the mental and emotional piece of this grandmother basically witnessing her grandson being shot, that's traumatic. And certainly she's upset, and I'm sure she's in a different space today from what has transpired. I mean, because I'm sure she's probably having dreams and thinking about, what if I had never called the police, etc. All those things which are normal. So my heart goes out to that entire family. I'm hoping that the city will just settle the pieces of it swiftly. I mean, because it's pretty obvious what has transpired there. And then to your latter question, Rem Alexander, this continued conversation, when you look at Herman Whitfield to this particular situation with Anthony Macklin, to always be pointing to training, that can't continue. Now, so in my mind, we need to address that issue. I mean, from my understanding, most of it is a complete officer choosing not to follow their general orders, what they have been trained to do. Now, so if the officer has been trained to do it a certain way, or if they weren't trained that way, then we need to be getting new trainers, in my opinion. And if the officers choose not to follow their training, I guess we need to look at what officers are we hiring. Maybe we need to go back to the hiring process and not just be like, okay, anybody, not literally anybody, but people who are getting that. And that may mean a redistribution of resources. What do you mean by that, Pastor? You need to get the best and brightest. You need people who can at least follow their training. If you're hiring people who cannot follow their training, you've hired the wrong people. And you may have to uh, make sure you're getting the right people. And that means you may not can reallocate some of those funds to hire better people. Because people like to think anytime you got a complaint that you want to defund the police. Well, no, you don't need to defund the police, because you need the best and brightest there. you need to invest dollars in the right places. And so that needs to be looked at. And if the chief is going to stand up behind uh, the officers when they did not follow general orders, they did not follow the protocols, the training they received, then in my opinion, then you have to look at leadership and say, now what's going on here? And I see a number of people saying, "Oh, man, he needs to be fired." You can't have it the way they're having it. This young man was a citizen of Indianapolis, a legal citizen. He was not under a warrant, or he has a job. He's has income. He is sitting. The reason he's not arrested because he was not committing a crime. He was sitting in his grandmother's driveway asleep. He happens to own a gun, which in Indiana, you can own a gun. And he did have a license for the gun. So he has no business ending up shot and shot 3 times. Now, there's a whole another set of issues in terms of quality. Because if you have officers as close as they were, Reverend Alexander, and they shot 30 times, over 30 times, and only hit him 3 times, what happened to all the other bullets? Somebody else could have been seriously injured right there. That's a whole other set of issues. That's why I'm saying the quality of what we're hiring needs to be addressed as well in this. And then it goes back to leadership. Leadership, who are you hiring? What are you paying for? And if you're going to cover that up, and if that's going to be acceptable behavior by the mayor needs to come in and weigh in on this. Not just with his publicist giving a statement of some sort. They need to weigh in.
Well, let me ask you.
He needs to weigh in. He needs to weigh in personally and say, now, what are we doing to fix it? Because we can't continue down this path. And as as a council, those questions need to be asked. Ask the chief, what are we doing?
That's where I was getting ready to lead to. I'm not sure that I've seen any of our council people address this issue. So it seems like the entire council has been pretty mum on not just this one, but similar issues. Even the Herman Whitfield the third case. I'm not sure I recall any statements or anything that the council said, here's what we're going to do, here's what we suggest, or even bring some folks to say, hey, we've got some questions. I'm not sure that I'm hearing that, and I could be wrong. You may be a little bit closer than that, but those are things, as you mentioned, I think are key.
Well, yeah, I mean, this needs to happen if you're going to build trust between community and law enforcement. And you're not going to have people solving cases when they don't want to talk to the police. My greatest fear is, and I would certainly understand it, you think this grandmother's going to call the police the next time somebody's in her driveway? Probably not. And that's not good. Because, she should be able to call 911. It's just that the person, if it happens to be one of her grandchildren, they shouldn't end up dead. But if it was somebody who's going to do something, so she did the right thing, but she's going to be hesitant to call. Because when the police come, are they going to escalate the issue or de-escalate the issue? If you're the Herman Whitfields, his parents, are you calling the police? Somebody have a mental case in your house? No, they're not calling. Last thing in their mind, we did that. Something bad happened. And we don't want to create that environment in our community where people tend to say, I'm going to be a little hesitant before I call, or try to manage it themselves when they should clearly call the police. We want to have a society where people can call the police and a qualified officer who can follow the training they've received, that can comply with the general orders they know that are recorded. If you can't do that, something is wrong. And those people shouldn't be on the police force, and that needs to be addressed.
Well,
And that comes from leadership.
Here's the piece that when we talk about training, some of this is just common sense. Because you have, you mentioned the escalation or de-escalation. You walk on a scene that's quiet with someone sleeping. It is de-escalated. You're whispering, walking around, you're making a little noise, you're talking to the grandmother, you're having conversations, time is elapsing, you are having conversations such as, well, what do we do? I mean, you're having those conversations at the same time. You're listening to a lady that's saying, I just want to make sure, and she said this more than once, I just want to make sure it's not any of my grandkids. That was clear. She said that more than once. She said it even on the 911 call. I'm not sure. She says, but I don't know. So when you look at options, and to me, this isn't a training thing. When you look at options, you could easily either had her come and just look at the individual while you were protecting her, or even took a picture of it with your smartphone and showed it to her. Something that could have been done in 30 seconds. If I said it like this, Pastor, if your training says that you don't bring her over to keep her safe, then your training would have said a whole lot more. But those couple things could have been done very easily.
Well, even that they had things on their car they could have used, blowing the horn to try to wake the young man up. There's a number of things they didn't do. What I don't want to fall victim to is, because somebody could always do that, every little situation, it wasn't covered in training. As though you literally got to go through the ideal situation. There's a level of professionalism and humanism that you hire people with some common sense. I shouldn't have to train, using the Memphis State example, not to kick somebody in the head that's handcuffed. If your mindset is to do that, you don't need to be on the job anyway. And so what we saw, it caused me to question, wait a minute, how about using some good sense? I know the person's going to be startled. If I'm sleeping, you wake me up, yelling at me, and keep in mind, there's supposed to be one voice. You had somebody get your hands up. IMPD, there were three voices when it's supposed to be one voice. They didn't do that. Okay. So when we get people who can't follow, then you got to first ask, well, what they doing in the job? Because you can train and train and train. If the person don't have common sense to do some stuff, then that ain't going to work. If I got to teach you, hey, yeah, you can't kick somebody in the head, or this person's handcuffed and she's already identified me as a grandson. Y'all still got him handcuffed. Where's the compassion to undo the handcuffs? But prior to him asking, hey, saying I'm in pain, there are a number of things that have to do with humanity. If you're going to be in the role, there's a level of humanity you need to have, a level of just common sense. If I got to literally cover the situation, every eye got to be the same team. That ain't never going to, they'll use that excuse every time. And it's got to be at night. It's got to be that light. We can't function that way.
Well, we can't function the way that we are functioning because the excuse they're using, it's not valid. You keep saying the issue, not you, but you as in the department keep saying the issue is training. Well, what is the issue with training? Tell us that. You tell us that. It's like you give us a summary. Well, here's the issue, and we're supposed to guess what it is. Instead of saying, okay, there's an issue with training, tell us what is the issue with training.
And if it's that big an issue, when you going to replace them? We going to let it continue? What are we doing?
It seems, I don't know. They had their town hall on yesterday, and a piece of this is, well, let me be more specific. They had their first town hall of many that they're having, that IMPD is having, and this one was, I believe, the Southeast District. Part of, I'll say, the issue, and they mentioned yesterday they're about to, get some new training. They even mentioned who the firm was, and I didn't jot that down. But I think it's the perception in the minds of the officers. And here's what I mean. In the conversation on last night, which was open, live, virtual, I think it was Commander Hicks. Don't quote me on that. But he actually said when a question came to him about the crime at the apartments by a gas station, a Marathon gas station, I believe, on 10th Street, his response, and the first words out of his mouth, Pastor, and we're talking about perception, was that, well, there are a lot of people that are on Section 8 that live over there. And then he added some other, conditions. But he led with, there are people that are on Section 8 that are over there. That's the mindset of the commander.
That's stereotyping.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of stuff that needs to be addressed.
So what do we expect?
And that probably leads to why somebody doesn't quite follow general orders, because maybe they don't see everybody as human. Maybe they don't see everybody worthy of general orders. And so when that's the case, then I will deviate from general orders because you're less than.
And it's okay.
But it makes it dangerous for we that are minorities, because if we're out and we got a gun, then that's going to be a problem.
We're less than Section 8 people. And let's be real. If they're identifying, who does what based on, a piece of paper that says that I'm getting some assistance, and we already have, questioned many a times, many a years, as far as, what the perception is of black people, we can honestly, conclude, and based on that comment, it showed me a lot. And being able to, participate in the conversation, I did comment that the conversation being where it was because people did jump in and jump on the commander's comment. That the fact that, what are you doing about the landlords? What are you doing about these people with Section 8? And the conversation went there. So I had to remind them that you have now just taken this conversation a whole nother place that is showing, that is really showing, I would say, where there's discrimination that could possibly be involved in your interactions with the community.
Well, there's classism. There's a number of things in there, and you need people who can handle that. And again, you got to screen the people up front. I think we get too many people in the job just to fill the seat, and then on the back end you got problems. And so now you're trying to make somebody fit something when you want the best and brightest, and which means you want people who are wise enough not to do some things, and it doesn't have to be like you literally spend 8 hours training them not to kick somebody in the head. That's not what you should be doing, and or even addressing this current situation. And so again, I go back because I know every officer wouldn't do it that way. I mean, that came out with the chief when the video was shared. Chief Bailey, Chief Taylor, they acknowledged that more experienced officers, other officers would not have handled the situation this way. So I start there. Now there's a number of things that I'd want to see change, but I start there. Okay, well, who we got in these roles? Why are we not able to hire the brightest and best? What's it going to take to do that? That needs to be addressed because you can't necessarily do that on the cheap. They're just now beginning to lift things up, trying to recruit people, but that's stuff that should have been going on years ago. Yeah, you're in catch up mode. They had a lengthy process that they were really trying to keep a certain network of people, and now you wake up and now, oh, well, we got a shortage. What we gonna do? Well, you can't just put anybody with a badge and a gun and say send them out in the street. Now we're getting what we see now. That ain't gonna work because this impacts what these officers did impacts detectives who are working cases in the neighborhood, other things where people will be looking at them like, because they see you as the police, and we don't want that. We don't even want it where somebody's like, well, let me handle this because the police gonna make a mess out of it. We don't want that either. We don't want citizens doing that. We have got to build uh, uh, the best police force in the country, and that will start at the top. That'll start with the mayor, counselors, chief, the command staff. That starts at the top, and that means you're going to have somebody who's our people in place who are committed to that, and everybody knows we're on the same team. But we can't be absent from these things that require leadership, though, and be like, well, you're not asking nothing, you're not saying nothing. That's not a solution. This is opportunity.
Well, let's kind of talk about that a little bit because there's a comment, saying that the police department is dangerous to the black community, and we've had a lot of black council people on the council, and there is a public safety committee that is part of the council. Is currently led by a black person who happens to be your opponent. And I'm not sure I've really seen anything of substance that's come from that direction, especially, well, I can say this for sure, when it's in regarding to the African American community.
Well, I'm hoping he'll respond to this. I'm hoping that he will, begin to ask some real serious. These questions that have been brought up on the feed tonight need to be addressed. And I'm sure he has a relationship with the chief. The chief reports to him. He could call Chief and say, Chief, what are you planning on doing at the next public safety committee meeting? What are you planning on doing? How you plan to address it? And look at that thing through two lenses. One of which is giving the feedback of the community and knowing what they want. What's up? If the chief says he's not firing anybody and nobody, there's going to be a slap on the hands, maybe. Because anytime you're talking about an administrative leave and still getting paid, that's not punishment for somebody who was shot at 30 times. I don't think anybody would buy that. So there has to be something that's somewhat proportionate. And if the officers didn't follow their training, didn't follow general orders, how do you get to keep the job doing that? Most people in most companies, Andrew, you can't go in and just break all the rules and keep the job. That normally doesn't happen. That's regardless of industry, just set up and say, well, I ain't following the orders of doing what it says here. I'm just gonna do it my way. You usually don't make it very long doing that.
Well, you would hope that there is some leadership that would be speaking up, especially when this has become, you can almost say it's habitual, and we're not getting any answers. We're not really hearing the people that we should be hearing say something. And I think that's where, when you look at, like our feed on tonight, you see we need new everything: mayor, chief, council people, media. I mean, it's like, hey, what do we have here in Indy? And a piece of that, well, that's wholly accurate. Because when you look at the size of the African American community here in Indianapolis, and you look at the suppression that we're under, and we should be, I would say, a much more vibrant community that has a lot more than what we have. Even what we had as quote unquote, our signature here, Black Expo, is pretty much gone. And I use the word suppress because I really think that's where we're at now.
Yeah, that's why we have to. We got to wake up because the next Anthony Macklin could be any one of us as black men that happens to be out and have something that look like a gun, may not even have a gun, that look like you might have one. You can end up shot or dead. And that's the sad reality. And I get it. The police officer wants to go home safely. We want to go home safely. But every black male who's got a gun is not a thug, and you can't treat them that way. And I don't see the community accepting its training. Not all the time.
Well, you can in this case. You had too many other options. Uh, it happened so quickly. If I'm not sure what the outcome's going to be. First and foremost, we definitely hope that Mr. Macklin has a complete recovery. We know there's litigation that's involved. It's going to be civil. We hope that there's a positive outcome there, but we need more. We need more. There's too much going on with the community, and lack of trust with law enforcement is not going to fix. There's so much that's tied with law enforcement and where the community need to work together, but we're not able to do it, and this ain't the path to getting there.
No, that's why you need leadership to speak up. I mean, one of the things in my mind, you have to appreciate is Chief Davis in Memphis sees this opportunity to lead. She didn't try to dismiss this, hide this, delay this, wait for it to get out of the news cycle. She was like, I'm going to take the bull by the horn and I'm going to lead. I'm going to release the video. I'm going to make some decisions. You may not agree with all of the decisions that she made, but at least she did make some. And she did some through the lens of the community. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
When this video is shown, the community ain't going to be asking me what I'm going to do with the officers because I've already done something. She made some choices and decisions and really got ahead of the community because she made decisions that would have been a logical question. Well, what you going to do? Well, she done already done it. Not talking about, well, I don't know. She had already done it. She had made a decision. She made a decision what she was going to do with that unit. Now, it wasn't the final decision because she suspended it, but at least she made a decision, which helped with the community because that's a logical question. What you going to do with this unit? Well, start out as suspended. At least she's made a decision. In Indianapolis, we tend to take the approach of we ain't getting ready to tell you nothing, and then that leads to assumptions by people and the whole gamut. And then you're saying, well, trust us when we tell you what we tell you. Now, it's going to be edited, but you trust us and don't be asking about the actual footage. That's not conducive to building trust and transparency, which is what you need for the other end of the spectrum. Because if it's the community member that's wrong, it's going to be quick, fast, and you're going to see it, and here you go. Okay, well, when it's one of your own, you got to do that too, because most likely then they would stop doing it if they knew, okay, this is going to come out, this is what's going to happen here. Then people will think about following those general orders, following that training that they spent, probably a year in, between field training and the actual training, and not, and then the chief won't be over here trying to say, "Oh yeah, we really wasn't trained." What the world? What are we trained in if we ain't trained in walking up to a car? If we ain't got that kind of training, what kind of training we got as a police officer then? So uh, that's it's just hard to believe. And then and when you back up to previous years and things have gone on, it's a trend. So we have to address that trend, and that's where leadership comes in.
Well, once again, you walk up to a car where there's not an escalation of situation, and um, also he hadn't done anything illegal. So nothing, there was no reason for it to escalate. We've got, I mean, it's as calm of a scene as you could have if you're an officer and you want to roll up on something like that. Just to be honest, I mean, because you could say you have complete control over that situation, and that's not how you do it. So, knowing that this is how they handle things, they actually, from my perspective, it's like they already made up in their minds. Well, when we knock, he's going to wake up. When he wake up, he's going to move. So we have to shoot. I mean, because
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad part of this. I mean, we have to, because many times the media will do this, try to characterize this gentleman as a bad guy, and he wasn't. And to say, well, he's not under arrest now. Don't try to. That's condescending to me because he wasn't a criminal. He ain't committed no crime. That's not impressive that you didn't arrest him. You didn't have nothing to arrest him for. He didn't break no laws. So the media shouldn't be, because I get it. They do what's given to them. Remember, the first video about this was he had a gun. Well, that
yeah,
ain't illegal in Indiana, right? So you're trying to frame the guy as a gangster, as a bad person.
hmm
We need to stop that. That does not build trust and transparency. When the family knows who he really is, and you're trying to frame somebody as though they're this gangster that's been shooting around all Indianapolis, they've not done that. He hadn't done that. Oh,
well,
yeah. By the way, when you say well, he's not under arrest. Well, he under arrest because he had not committed any crime. Matter of fact, the crime was done to him, not by him.
and IMPD very easily could have controlled that narrative, especially in that initial reporting. They could have, because they know what they are giving. Pretty much what gets reported is what they give out. So they have the control. That's underhanded. They wanted to paint a picture and a narrative. We didn't hear Chief, talking about this instance, or Rick Schneider. We didn't hear him talking about this, but they're talking about Memphis. We got stuff here that really need to be tended to. Uh, we keep getting comments about there needs to be an investigation with the police department. There needs to be something so that we can't continue, to allow this to happen. So, Pastor Greene, you've been with us for a little bit over half an hour. You shared your candidacy. Before you close, you have anything else you want to share? What's next for? Because I heard that you said don't be mean, vote for Greene. So what's new? What's next?
Well, we're just listening to the community, wanting to get our message out that we're here for the community. I think that's a lens that needs to be also at the table, along with the corporate side, is a community side, and allow those to come together. We got issues we need to solve. And, I've spent my whole life problem solving. My background is in IT. I solve problems, computer problems, IT issues. And I believe that there are great solutions. This can be a great city. But we do need to solve some of these problems and not run from them.
All right. Well, we wish you the best. The headquarters is 5450 Lafayette Road, Suite number 9, Indianapolis 46254. That is the Vote for Green headquarters. Don't forget, you also have the website, voteforgreen.com. Pastor, any closing remarks? We'll give it to you. Our candidate for District number 1.
Hey, just don't be mean and vote for Green.
Amen. We'll catch you next week at 7 p.m.